So in today's episode, I interview Ian Lumb, also known as Lummy, who is one of the owners of Ontrack Expeditions, which is the trekking company I went with when I went over to the Kokoda Trail last year. Now in this episode, he shares some really interesting insights around what's actually going on in the adventure travel industry at the moment, how you can support local travel industry now and then in the future, as well as gives some great tips and great info around some things you might be handy to bring on the trail, and also some really, really great and valuable food products which might be a great addition to your hiking pack. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Welcome, Ian. Thank you so much for coming on the show, mate.
Beautiful. Thanks for having me, Ron. Appreciate it.
So really excited to have you on. As we were saying before we got on, I've talked quite a bit about the trip I did to Kokoda with you guys on the podcast previously. So I've sort of, really excited to have you on to chat a little bit about, your business, what's actually going on in the adventure world at the moment. Because obviously so much is going on in the world, and then just talk through a few pretty unique things that you've got going on. So to kick things off, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background in trekking, how Ontrack Expeditions got started, and then sort of where it's evolved to today?
Yeah, no worries. Well, firstly, thanks again for the chat. I mean, our relationship goes back probably more than 12 months now, getting you sorted and ready for Kokoda, and to have you and your team walk with us was fantastic November last year. Wish I could have been on that trip, but unfortunately things didn't allow it that way. But that's all good. We'll get you back again next time. But hey, my name's Ian Lumb. Everyone calls me Lummy. Ian probably works better when I'm 75 and retired by that stage. So Lummy's normally the best way people in the industry know me as. And for me, from the age of 18, I entered a diploma of outdoor recreation on the Mornington Peninsula in Melbourne, down at Frankston. I'm 36 now, so I'm nearly 20 years in the outdoor recreation education industry. From my diploma, was working freelance for a number of large outdoor suppliers here in Victoria. Some freelance stuff and probably a focus more towards the water-based things, surfing, whitewater rafting. But hiking in particular had something to it that kept drawing me back, and leading groups and working with companies that did hiking. A few years later on, decided that probably a better pathway was maybe heading through the education realm, more of a steadier job, and found out that my time working with people and working with kids was probably good evidence that I might have made a good or could make a good teacher. So went on to Victoria University and studied at VU in Melbourne under the guidance of a couple of very good mentors, being Matthew Cox and Dave Marsden, two gentlemen who I still chat to today and guided me through my education there at VU. 4-year course, which then led me on to actually working in the outdoor department at Victoria University, and a small stint in the teaching world. From there, sort of transitions into Ontrack. 4 years ago, I was introduced to Andrew and Richard James. Andrew and Richard James are two founders of Ontrack Expeditions. Been operating since 2010, so we're nearly a decade in. They started with 2 trips across the Kokoda track. From there, things developed as the years went on for Ontrack Expeditions, and obviously the focus, and our main focus, is still Kokoda. We have branched in other areas, but Kokoda's always been something our heart has been. For me to come in 4 years ago and start as a guide, essentially, with my background in outdoor education, recreation, guiding people, keeping them happy, healthy and alive, which is the main priority when we're taking people out to remote areas, was the forefront of me coming into the company. And I suppose from there it's been an evolution and development in me personally through a business mind, but also building a relationship with the James brothers and giving them and me the opportunity to see what else we could do with this business. For them, and a bit more about them, their father, Bill James, has written the book, The Guide to the Kokoda Track. He's one of many, similarly with the names of Peter Fitzsimons, Paul Ham. He's a long historian of the Kokoda campaign and a huge donator to the KTF, Kokoda Track Foundation. So Kokoda was kind of in the blood of Richard and Andrew as they grew up, as their father developed and had a keen interest towards history and preserving Australia's war history. Obviously, today as we record, we move into Anzac Day and commemorations around, and it's going to be a lot different this year. And trying to keep those, what we call keeping the spirit of Kokoda alive, was what their main aim was. So for Ontrack to work in the Kokoda space allowed the boys to operate the way they did. But what they found was a lot of clients would say, great, I've done Kokoda, what's next? And that's been the birthplace and what we've springboarded into essentially what we're operating and what we're doing today. So on our product list is Kilimanjaro, obviously the world's highest freestanding mountain. Beautiful spot, Tanzania. Have you been to Tanzania by any chance?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Got to get you over there, mate. Beautiful spot down there, a little Moshi town. Go for an explore. The coffee's fantastic. But anyway, I digress. Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Everest Base Camp, Annapurna Trail and surrounding mountains in Nepal. We've put a team on top of Amida Blam, known as the Sexy Mountain, back in 2018. We've done a couple of trips up to Island Peak, and we've got a trip that is in the books for March next year. Hopefully we can travel to do Mirror Peak. So we try and do a couple of higher mountains each year, and that would obviously be in our Nepal region there. Tasmania, overland track. There's nothing better than your own backyard, and we love it down there in Tassie. So we're running about 6 to 8 trips a year at the moment, mainly school groups. And again, Tasmania, you've got to look after your own, and the way the travel world is, maybe domestic travel is that forefront. So it's working with those Tasmanian operators, which is really fun too. And then we're moving into Vanuatu. Vanuatu is a corporate product we do with an Australian NGO called Solar Buddy, which is around distribution of solar lights and solar entities into remote communities that don't have that kind of access to them. So for us, as we grow and as we build, we're always looking at something extra, but it's kind of funny how we always fall back to our grassroots, and obviously that being Kokoda. Had 2020 ran the way we would have liked, I reckon, if the world would have liked. We were looking at close to 25 Kokoda expeditions on the ground this year. That's not going to be the case, but that now means we may have to do 40 next year. So that's okay with us. We're growing, we're building, but at the same time, we're mindful of the world's doing. So I'm taking a breath every now and again to just sit back, relax, and remember it. That's all right. We'll take it easy, and then we'll get busy when things kick on.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I know a lot of the listeners, so a lot of people listening to this are the people who are, physically training for an upcoming trip. And I've heard from so many people saying that, they're very disappointed the trips have been cancelled. Like, everyone's in the same boat here, and they're sort of a little bit lost with their training and everything. And we've talked quite a bit about what people on the client side of things and the actual hiker side of things, what's going on. But I'd love if you could talk a little bit about what's going on the other side of things, on the actual the adventure travel industry, and what's actually happening with everyone at the moment, and give a bit of insight into that and how this situation is affecting the operators, both the Australians in your case and also the local operators as well.
Yeah, so it's a hard game of business and pleasure, this industry. And when something like this comes along, I suppose the last one that really struck the industry hard was September 11, and there was a massive decline in air travel back then, obviously not in the industry then. But what we're experiencing now, and I'm not going to say the word that everyone keeps saying that starts with "un" and ends in precedent. I won't say that because we hear too much of it, but I will say we're in a situation that we're learning from, which is a massive learning curve for so many industries and so many businesses, for the tourism industry and for the expedition travel industry. Our biggest concern is making sure that our clients know that we're there. We're not going to drop off the face of the planet. We're not spending any money they've put into us to try and stay alive. Any good, reputable Australian company will be able to have a reserve in which they can borrow against to keep themselves essentially door open. For Ontrack Expeditions, way where our business model and case is we have a very reduced amount of expenses in operations. We spend more of our time in other countries than we do spending money in Australia. So our operational costs are low. For our clients who have put money down for trips, who have had them cancelled, it's quite simple. We offer them a full refund. We roll them over into 2021, or we hold a credit and say, if and when you're ready to travel and the world's ready to travel, we will put that against the trip. I think it's more important now than ever before that people have something to look forward to strive to be motivated for, to keep that training up, to know that there will be change, but there is a light at the end of this tunnel. And if you've got something like a Kokoda trip or a Kilimanjaro or something in Nepal on the books, you've deposited it, then you're feeling motivated and you're ready to get through this. And that's probably our message to most people. For us personally, this is hard. Like every business, we've taken pay cuts. As long as the mortgage is paid and we're eating, we're fine. But we've taken massive pay cuts to make our company stay sustainable during this period. But I suppose what's happening in PNG and in Tanzania is there is no income. If there's no one travelling, then there's absolutely no money into the countries, and this is the hardest part. So for us and our relationship with these operators in country, we have a very close, again, a decade-long relationship with our boys in PNG, and we're paying them a small amount, enough to pay for their food, to pay for their bills and whatnot. A lot of our boys have headed, and girls have headed back up into the villages, because up in the villages, you would have experienced growing up in Abawari, beautiful Abawari.
Yep.
They can live up there without any money. They can live off the land, and they do live off the land. That's what they've been doing for, how many thousands of years, just like Indigenous Australians did for however long before we came along. And they know how to do that. So that's what they're doing essentially at the moment. What we're looking at Papua New Guinea at the moment is going to lose over 70 to 80% of its yearly revenue through tourism and travel. We know that straight away. The health implications into PNG are going to be difficult too. Their health standards nowhere near ours. So we're now looking at a flow-on effect that, okay, we may be able to travel back there again, but are they going to be healthy enough for us to be there? And that's the other thing we're working hard really closely with likes like KI, Kokoda Initiative, KTA, Kokoda Track Authority, the KTOA, which is Kokoda Track Operators Association. Lots of Ks in there, I know. You get used to all the acronyms. But we're all working hard to make sure that whatever we can hold in country, keep them happy and healthy, to do the best we can to ride ourselves through this. We know this will pass. We know travel will be different. But from a company point of view, if we can instill the trust in our clients to know that we will be there at the end and we will be there to run their trips, I think that's the most important thing. And that's what we're striving to do. And that's our ethos towards this period. We're here. Our doors are still open. We're just not traveling anywhere at the moment.
Yeah, fair enough. And I imagine what you mentioned, that like there's going to be such an impact when people start traveling again. That's going to be a thing that happens in many, many destinations around the world, like not just Kokoda, and they might not be able to have the structure to handle like such an influx of people again, or whatever, however that plays out. How would someone, like just anyone listening to this, make a decision about that, or an intelligent decision further down the line? Like, how do they know what's a good course of action?
Yeah, sure. And I suppose I drive all information in regards to our international operations from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Australian government. We're essentially dictated and run by everything that DFAT tells us to do. We have good relationships with HICOM in PNG, so we're always aware of what's happening in country. What we're seeing, and again, I'm far from an expert. I only read what I read and hear what I'm told, and that is that we will see an opening of borders, but it may be in a staggered sense, where travel to New Zealand may be the first option. We know that Pacific Island nations are the best places to be in the world right now. Fiji has 17 cases, to which none of them are in hospital. Vanuatu has 0 cases. PNG to date has 4. They're still testing some more. So if and when the possibility of international travel is to arise, it seems like the Pacific nations are going to be the first ones that are going to operate and the first ones that will open. But I suppose even before that, and I touched on it earlier, is around domestic travel. Personally, I got into this industry thinking how good it is to travel the world, but at the same time, I get more satisfaction about travelling in Australia. And I think the Australian travel industry and tourist industry and the trekking industry should focus heavily on Australian expeditions and Australian trips. Overland Track, Cape to Cape, 3 Capes. I mean, the list goes on. You can go anywhere in Australia, Larapinta, and do beautiful walks. Not only are you supporting Australian jobs, you're supporting Australian businesses, and you're seeing your own backyard. And, mate, we're in a pretty good country. We've got it pretty good down here, little Australia. We think we're big in the world, but not many people know about how we live and what we do, and we're in a great space. So I think the biggest thing for people, if they're looking for their next travel destination, is focus on Australia. Put the money back into the communities that need it most, those that were affected by fire. I know Kangaroo Island has some beautiful trekking through it, and those communities are really looking for that support. So this could be a good opportunity for us to re-explore Australia ourselves as a country and have a look at how beautiful this place really is.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more there. Then at the moment, like during these times when operations might not be running, are there ways that people can help support the adventure travel industry, whether it's Australia or their local industry? Is there a difference between, say, postponing a trip and cancelling, or is there another way that they can help potentially support these different businesses?
Definitely, mate. And I suppose the biggest message we've had for people is we will refund. It is your money. But if you leave what you've paid in a deposit form or a part payment or a full payment for your trip, and although we may have to postpone it, if you can leave that money with us, that essentially allows us to then go to financial institutions and borrow more money, because we have proof of equity in our business. We have proof that we have sales. We have sales that have been made, but we haven't been able to transform them over into revenue because of the fact we haven't provided the service. So that's the first one. That helps huge. The second one is, if you've got a trip you want to think about doing, there's no harm in actually booking right now. There's no harm in having a look at what they've got on offer. The only thing I say to you is be very due diligent in reading their booking terms and conditions, and be very upfront and honest with you. For us, again, we do that, and it's as simple as we'll happily deposit against a trip. We acknowledge if that trip isn't to run in, say, 2020, we can roll you over like I talked about before. So I suppose first thing, think about where it is you want to go. Second, have a look at operators that supply it. And then thirdly, are you comfortable in putting down a deposit and make sure that they're holding it for you? And if you are, by all means, go ahead, because again, that's that whole, what are we striving for? What are we going to do next? And that's that light at the end of the tunnel. And it gives us a great reason to keep training in our backyards or around the oval or wherever people are training at the moment. It keeps us fit, it keeps us healthy, and it keeps our minds going well. So if you're thinking of a trip, get out there, put a deposit down, but again, just check those booking terms and conditions.
Yeah, fair enough. And so if you've got a goal in sight, this is a good segue into my next question. So obviously you've got a lot of trail experience and you've seen a lot of people come onto trips in all shapes and sizes. Do you think, as a general thing, are there many people out there who underestimate the physical demands of your adventures? And then if so, what are some common issues you see when you're actually on the trail?
Yeah, sure. So definitely, for things, I suppose Kokoda has always been talked about and hyped as a very, very difficult walk. I suppose my question for you, what did you think of it? Was it as hard as you thought? Was it as easy? What did you think, mate?
I think it was just on par what we thought. I think because we took the physical prep pretty seriously leading up, it was tough, but it wasn't outrageously tough. But I feel like, just because I know, looking at Ali, my girlfriend, there were points where if she wasn't as fit as she was, there would have been some angry words had. So I think going off that, I think we were in a good position because we took it seriously. So I think it lived up to the hype, but we weren't in that terrible state where we're hating every step of it.
Great. So that's exactly what we get from a lot of our clients. There's two types of clients, obviously, and it sounds simple. The people who have trained hard, so they're physically ready. So it allows them to sort of take every step in their stride, take each hill. And again, Summit Day on Kill is a very, very hard push. If you're physically ready for that, then you're mentally ready for that, then you can enjoy yourself more. We then get the people who trained a little bit, maybe not as enough as they should, and had to push themselves a little bit harder. So it didn't allow them to actually see the world around them, to embrace what was happening in each situation, to see all the different people, all the different villages and things, because what I like to term in terms of having the blinkers on. The head's down, you're thinking about getting through the next step, you're working hard. The early base and the early training and that 12 months lead up, if longer if you can, into doing a trip like this will mean not only you're physically ready, but there's a mentality that, oh yeah, I've trained for this. I'm ready to go. This is good to go. A lot of our guides say that what we do is 60-40. 60 in your head, 40 in your body. Now, how do you train your mind? Well, you train your body first, right? So if people are training themselves physically, then they're also training themselves mentally in a way that when they hit that hard hill and they look up it, I mean, the wall, I don't know if you remember the wall, day 3.
I remember the wall.
Yeah, the wall. For those who may want to know a bit about the wall, just take the name of it, and that's what it is. It's the record up that I've got one of my porters running it. He can run it with a 20-kilo pack on in about 20 minutes. White man walking, again, the usual people who are walking up and down, we will take anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour to walk an extremely steep section of the Kokoda track. It's a good burner. It's a great view from the top, though.
Yeah.
But having that mental preparation comes from that physical element. I suppose the biggest thing we find from people is the time on their feet. People aren't used to standing on their feet for 8 to 10 hours a day. If we're in offices or we're in workspaces where we sit a lot, I say to people often, look, if you can work for the next 6 months leading your trip, work at a stand-up working station. Get used to being on your feet. Walk as much as you can to work. You got to get used to having those, a bit of fatigue in the legs isn't a bad thing, but then also complementing that with some really good walks on the weekend. And I find the common issue with people is the really, really sore legs at the end of the day. And a lot of that comes down to not being used to being on their feet for 8 or 10 hours.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's such a good point, which I've never actually talked about on this podcast, is, just doing what you can to be on your legs. And the standing and desk idea, that's actually a really interesting point, which I might have to borrow myself, mate.
Mate, you can, I mean, that's how I work. It's better physically. I find you feel better at the end of the day because you haven't been sitting all day. And it's easy to do. Stand-up desks are reasonably cheap, and throw one in and off you go. So I'm a big fan personally, and hopefully that helps.
Yeah, fair. I've been actually recommending a few of my clients at the moment get involved with that, because now that they're just stuck at home all day, quite a few of my knee pain clients who are like preparing for hikes, they're just getting really bad knee pain just sitting down all day. So that's actually been a bit of a flavour of the month, just trying to get everyone on that for that reason. Yep. But good to know. So a little while ago, you did a really great blog post around some cool gear recommendations for different trips that you personally recommend. So would you mind just sharing a few potentially unique gear recommendations that you could recommend to an aspiring trekker?
Yeah, sure. I suppose the first one, I have to say this to anyone who's sort of starting out or looking for that next trip, and it seems quite simple, but it eludes a few people, is that if you're going to spend your money on anything, anywhere, it's your feet. Go out and buy a really good quality pair of boots. Please don't buy them online. The amount of people I've had buy boots online and rock up to trips and I've only worn them a couple of times. Go into a very well-reputable outdoor retailer. Get them to size your feet up properly. And don't be hell-bent on brands. People, I buy this brand. Or what about this brand? I think I saw on Facebook, one of the communities on Facebook the other day, someone asking, which brand would you prefer, this one or this one? And I responded with, well, don't focus on the brand. Focus more on which boot fits your foot. So I work on the rule that a boot picks you, you don't pick it. You may have to try 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 pairs. I have a gentleman years ago when I worked in an outdoor retailer in Melbourne. I couldn't fit him and I had to send him to another shop because I just could not get his massive foot. It was the biggest foot I've ever seen in any of our boots. I just couldn't do it, but I knew one brand that would. So it's the same thing where you just want to make sure that the equipment you're using is the right equipment for you. For me, I have a brand of boot that I wear. I only ever wear that brand. It works for me perfectly. I can walk in, I can buy that brand off the shelf and take it home and I'm ready to go. And I know that because my feet have been measured to that. So I suppose the first thing is making sure that is a non-negotiable. If you're going to spend money anywhere, get a really good quality pair of boots. And if you get them on a discount, happy days. But, focus on that. And a good pair of synthetic mids, $200 to $300 at the end of the day. A heavy leather, $500. For what we do, a lot of what we do, I recommend a good pair of synthetic mid boots. What did you wear on Kokoda?
I had oh my gosh, my listeners are going to hate me right now because I had a Solomon something. I'm looking at them right now. No, I loved them. It's just, I just can't quote the actual, model.
But it's like a synthetic style mid boot or a trail walker style shoe. Yeah. So something like that's absolutely perfect. In terms of unique gear recommendations, there's some really simple things that make life just so much easier. Firstly, you can buy very cheap, lightweight, very small, compact, foldable chairs. And you'd be surprised how nice it is to have a little chair that's strapped to the side of your porter pack or your Sherpa pack or even your pack when you're trekking to sit down rather than sitting on the ground. I know that sounds ridiculous and such a first world problem, but having a nice little comfy chair to just sit on is a big one. The flip, to save cash, you got all these fancy wilderness washers you get in the bottles now and these tabs and stuff. Buy yourself a nice organic bar of soap and put it in a Ziploc bag. Think about the biodegradable elements to some of these soaps. Unfortunately, some of the soaps these days go in our river streams and aren't fantastic. So you see all these fancy little packets of things and bits that are designed to make your life easier, and often they are. But you can do it through your home and what you have in your home on a lot cheaper way that's going to make things just as easy. So for me, any trip, it's a nice little organic bar of soap that my wife buys, and that's in a Ziploc bag. That's it. That's all I use for washing, if I use soap at all. And for those who are listening, you're lucky you're not sitting next to me on a good day on the trek, because I don't often use a soap. And then from there, it all comes down to personal bits and pieces. I don't buy the fancy cutlery and crockery sets that collapse down. I just go to the cheap shop on the corner and buy a $2 plastic bowl, because it does the same thing and it doesn't weigh much. For me, my focus is around weight. Weight is gold in what we do. A lot of the trips we offer, people have a Sherpa or a porter, so they don't have to worry about carrying their full pack. But for all my guiding that I've done and the stuff I still do in Tasmania, I can be carrying up to 30 kilos sometimes. I don't want to, but sometimes I will for a couple of days just to help with the extra food or the extra first aid or anything we're carrying. So weight is a big thing. So for me, I weigh up the cost difference between the weight. If I'm carrying a big heavy pack for too long, my knees get sore and then I can't work as much as I want. So for me, weight's a big thing. So when it comes to ultra lightweight, there's several brands out there that do some really good lightweight stuff.
Awesome. And that that's super interesting about the soap as well, because I know there's such discussion around that online, and I don't really know much about the specifics. So the organic soap's the way to go. It was really good to know.
That's just me personally. I don't think you can buy branded wash things from different outdoor companies. You're adding to the plastic packet. You can spend your whole life looking at it. We actually are implementing moving forward a completely no soap policy for Papua New Guinea. So when it comes to having a wash and little showers and in the rivers and streams, you just use your hand, you splash your water and you're done. Because at the end of the day, we all smell the same. No one notices. You're not putting deodorants on, and there's no reason why we should be putting stuff into their ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually pulled out what was it? I think it was my shorts or my shirt that I wore on Kokoda the other day from my drawer, and it had been washed about 3 times since then, but it sat in the drawer for a good 6 months, and it smelled exactly the same as on Kokoda, so I don't think I'm ever going to get that out.
No, unfortunately, you won't. And also your porter pack. So I have different kits I have different clothes kits for different countries based on the fact that there's just some stuff that doesn't matter how much eucalyptus oil you use, mate. You're not getting rid of that smell.
A random question that just popped in my head. The first time that we met, you were talking about a book that you were reading, which was a parody book about old school mountaineers. Could you remember that book, and what's that called? Because it's popped in my head a few times, and it's literally just come to my head right now.
The Ascent of Rumdoodle. Rumdoodle is a satirical take on the first summiting teams of Mount Everest. For any of your listeners who may have been to Nepal or aspiring to go to Nepal, fantastic read, really easy to get a hand of. So the Ascent of Rumdoodle, and there's such a cult following that there's the Rumdoodle bar in Kathmandu. So if you head your way there, you go to Nepal, you do base camp or you head up and around, have a read of the Ascent of Rumdoodle and head to the Rumdoodle bar and have something to eat and drink. It's a very good read.
Amazing. That's popped into my head a few times. I've always forgotten to send you an email, so thank you for clearing that up.
No worries, mate. Check it out. It's good for a laugh.
All right, so now I want to dig into a little bit about the on-track meals. So as we said on the podcast quite a few times, like we talked about nutrition quite a bit in the sense of getting good nutrition in your training and on the trail, so essential to help the body recover, fuel your performance, X, Y, and Z, really dive into the science. But one thing we haven't simply mentioned is just how important getting good tasting food is on the trail and what a difference that can make to, one, being able to actually feed yourself enough food to get the energy, and 2, just have that mental boost of actually having something delicious to get in yourself. And I've talked about previously on the podcast, I'm pretty sure, about the meals that we had on Kokoda and just how blown away we were, like just such a good way to end the day with these particular meals that are produced by Ontrack. So I would love if you could go into a little bit about what Ontrack meals are, like what makes them different to quite a few other products out there, and just give us the rundown of it all.
Yeah, sure. So I suppose, again, like everything through evolution, we wanted to do exactly that as a company. We wanted to make sure that the meals we're supplying on our expeditions are second to none. We complement heavily with local produce where possible, and I suppose for us, we never want to take from a food bulk from a country. If we're heading into a fragile region like the Papua New Guinea and Stanley Ranges, if every trekker is to eat nothing but local food, there's no local food left. So we wanted to focus on a way that we could get good nutritional food across the Kokoda track for our clients and in Tasmania, where we cater for, and in Vanuatu, I should say, but do it in a way that we can then maybe head into the Australian market. So essentially, on-track meals are what we call ultra heat treated retort package meals. They're not dehydrated. They're not freeze dried. They're a wet meal. The pouch that's sealed in gives us up to 2 years shelf life stability. So no refrigeration, no freezing, nothing like that. And because the contents is already cooked, essentially you don't have to cook it. You can just open the packet and you can eat it straight out, cold if you wish, or you heat it up in a pan or you heat it up in some boiling water in the packet and you tip it out. Hence why the name is sort of called a heat and eat style meal. A great story about our food is an amazing woman, Sammy McComb, who summited Everest in 2018. She was aiming to do the Everest Lhotse double, but unfortunately came down a bit earlier from Lhotse due to frostbite. She had our on-track meals chicken curry about 4 hours out from the Everest summit. And she said from that moment all the way up to the top of Everest, all the way back down to Camp 5, all she could taste was chicken curry in her mouth. Now, she has eaten it since, mind you, but that was an idea, an example of us being able to supply a meal or a type of food that didn't rely on water. We want people to be able to eat these meals wherever they are in a warm situation or cold or however they want without having to heat water or boil water. Obviously, they're a lot more enjoyable warm, and we highly recommend that. And so for us, it was about seeing that there was a gap in the market. We could see from a retail point of view that the only thing on offer was dehydrated and freeze-dried. Now, they definitely have a place. They are lighter than our meals, and I'll be honest with that. But for us, it was about supplying a meal like a bolognese, a chicken curry, a chili beef and bean, of the meals you experienced on Kokoda, right? That you sort of sit back at the end of a hard day trekking and you're like, wow, this is delicious. I'll be guilty and put my hand up and say every now and again when it's my turn to cook at home, we have bolognese for dinner. Now, did I cook it? Well, technically not. I heated it. But that's the same element. You know, it is good enough to eat at home as well. Would you open a packet of dehydrated or freeze-dried meal to eat at home for dinner? Probably not. That's when Uber Eats comes in handy, I suppose. Not that they're paying me for that plug. But it was for us, it was seeing that there was an opportunity for us to cater our own expeditions, one. Two, to then see there's a change in the market and a gap in the market, we felt. And then we've been selling quite comfortably nationwide for 12 months now through a number of independent outdoor retailers. And we're in a rebranding and a rephasing stage. We're upgrading all our delivery systems. And we're about to have a couple of new and I think revolutionary meals come on the menu. I'm not going to talk about them exactly today, but they are on the way within the next couple of months, and I believe they will completely change the way people see how you can eat while you're trekking in the outdoors.
Oh, exciting there, mate.
I might have to send you a few samples just to see what you think.
I wouldn't say no at all. Out of curiosity, is it a purely Australian-only delivery, or is there an international option there, or how's that work?
Yeah, so at the moment, and the way we're working is we're rebuilding, as I said, we're rebuilding absolutely everything around this brand, website, right through the delivery system. We're only distributing into Australia at the moment. We have a strategic plan into which we're going to go into other markets within the next 12 months internationally. But for us at the moment, we're only operating, delivering and sending in Australia. So our meals are made, Australian-made. It's Australian-owned because Ontrack Expeditions Proprietary Limited, which is the owner of Ontrack Meals, is 100% Australian family business. So we're made in Brisbane. The production company who takes care of our production side of it in conjunction with us source as much Australian produce as possible to go into these meals. I will be honest, they're not made with all 100% Australian ingredients. but majority of what we put in there, we try and source locally where possible. And that comes down to seasonality and some things we just can't control.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, for anyone listening who's interested in getting a bit more of exciting food on their plate for the trail, or just trying some of that stuff out, like, I can definitely give them my big tick of approval. They were really, really did blow me away. So, but thank you really so much for coming on, Lummy. It's been a really great episode, and it's so great to get your insights around a few of the things that are going on in the adventure travel industry at the moment, and just some great recommendations for stuff on the trail. If someone was wanting to find a little bit more about Ontrack Expeditions, or get themselves some of the Ontrack meals for themselves if they're in Australia, where can they find you?
Easy. So obviously the world's all on socials, and you can simply jump on Facebook or Instagram. Our handle Ontrack Expeditions. For our meals, we've just rebranded, so you may find us in two elements, but our main focus is Ontrack Meals, and both are obviously .com.au through the internet to go from there. My details are on both. Now, if someone here on the podcast is interested to try what our meals are like, if you want to send me, and I'm happy to do this personally, if you want to send me a personal email, say that you've listened through, I'll happily send you a discount code so we can get you some really delicious Australian-made meals for your next trip, or even at home on a Friday night if you can't bother cooking, and you can give them a try. Again, it's supporting us, which we love to do, supporting an Australian business, and we love the support we get, especially from you, Rowan, as well, and from the other people in the hiking and expedition community here in Australia.
Oh, amazing, mate. Well, I'll put all those links below, so if anyone was wanting to check it out, they can check it out in the show notes and have a look through all that. But thank you again so much for coming on, Lummy. I think this has been a great episode, mate, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day and making this happen.
Mate, absolute pleasure. And for those who don't know, Rowan sometimes does the odd walk with us, so when the world gets back to normal, come for a walk with Rowan. It's good fun.
That's it. If you're in the Sydney area, hit me up. You've been listening to the Training for Trekking podcast. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, rate and review us in iTunes. So thanks for getting involved, and we'll see you on the next one.